Welcome, welcome,
Welcome.
everybody. It's been a while. Glad
It
to have
has been.
everybody back. Yay, we're here with a wonderful guest. This is Elyse. She's a BCBA, and this is episode 80, which is so big for
80. We're
us.
moving
So
up.
exciting. Yay. Okay, so I love our topic for today. This is something we haven't really talked about before. So, Elyse, do you mind telling us a little bit about your background, what you do, and kind of what your niche is in our field?
Absolutely. So I am Elyse Kennedy, used to be Elyse Sally. So if you Google me, I don't know if I come up as Kennedy yet because that
Yeah,
just
she's
changed
newly
recently.
married.
Yeah, we just got married in March. So I know it takes the SEOs and all that crawlers and whatever stuff a long time to catch up. But yeah, I used to be Elyse Sally. I did my bachelor's in psychology, a master's in behavior analysis and exceptional education, and I'm in another one now because I just like doing these things to myself.
Love that.
And this one is social work. I finished this one in December. So,
Yay.
yep.
So exciting.
Yep. And I
I love
own Serenity Family Solutions. This is a company that helps people go through divorce and paternity. So if they have children together, but they're not married and they split up, and any other kind of family changes. And it tries as much as possible to keep them out of court and to keep it amicable and to actually have effective communication flowing rather than people just fighting with motions and not speaking to one another. And so that's a
Yeah.
big part of what I do. I also founded recently the Safe to Mediate nonprofit. And that is something that is a pre-mediation risk and safety screening. And it assesses people for risk of harm to self or others, coercive control, domestic abuse, and supportive factors. So I've been working a lot on that this summer and I'm really excited about it.
I love that.
Fantastic. I am curious if you could tell us a little bit, Elise, just because like having the background you do in like just psychology and then jumping in to be like, I have a business in 2-hour divorce. Like, can you like tell our listeners like why was that such an important thing for you to do?
Sure. Yes, that is a very personal thing that I do because I went through a paternity case that was very litigious, very contentious, definitely the worst thing I've ever experienced as an adult. And I was going, unfortunately, I have to use the word against. I was going against the other parent who had multiple millions to just be able to out lawyer me. And that happened relatively quickly. So I was representing myself in this case and having to do hearings against this attorney. And it was just really an awful experience. I did a lot of therapy afterwards and I created 2-hour divorce and then offer these other services to be able to provide as many alternatives to people then so they don't have to go through something like that. So it's something that's near and dear to my heart, which means I have a very deep well of energy for it.
Yes.
So I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about mediation and its role in a divorce. And for some people, it's like, this is going to be it and we're not going to make it to trial, right? So they bank a lot on mediation. And then there's the other extreme where it's like, it's just a step in our process and it's not really worth doing. So, when you explain what you do and how you can be different from some of these like traditional mediators that might just check a box and say, all right, well, off to trial you go. How do you really get people in the mindset to not be fighting with each other and so contentious and communicating poorly and hostility in a way that's actually productive? How do you
I
couch that?
think that has kind of naturally happened on its own in the past few years, just with the way that we market ourselves. We kind of draw those types of people to us, where people are coming to us very, very early on. Oftentimes, it's just one person saying they haven't even told their spouse yet that they want a divorce, and they want information from me about their different options. So I'm telling them about 2-hour divorce or just mediation or working with an attorney, whether it's full representation or partial representation or collaborative divorce. So I'm really just giving them an overview of what the process can look like for them and then allowing them to choose. I feel like self-determination is a very huge part of going through something like this. And I also, because of my behavior analytic background, I take data on all of our mediations to see what's effective and what's not and recently had that published in a law journal because if in the past 2 years of data, when people did mediation voluntarily, they were in the 90s percentages for having a full agreement. And then if they litigated first, so either that was because there was a spite aspect or just because people simply don't know and they don't know what the process is. So they litigate first, the other person is served, and then they're ordered to mediate at some point during that case. And then it drops down into the teens. Because when people are forced to do things and then forced to pay for things, a lot of people don't like doing that. So I can, of course, just say what I think it is, but the data really shows that it is more effective to be mediating first.
So my question, and I know I've asked you this personally before, but I think this is what all the listeners and people who are interested or like in this process are probably thinking like, what if you have a partner who's not fully on board to give in to a lot of things, right? What if it is like, maybe if it's not even super high conflicts, we know those might be different, but if it's, a little bit higher conflict and it's like, I'm not willing to budge, is that somebody you're still willing to take on? Or is that somebody that you're like, no, maybe I already have to give them to lawyers?
I think it depends because I'm usually talking to the one person first who does want it. And then I ask them if they want me or us as the company to reach out to their partner. And I generally don't recommend that because the other person can view it as an attack. And I definitely don't want that. But I sometimes recommend people go to, we partner with a couple marriage and family therapists who will do sort of like divorce sessions, especially if one person doesn't feel like they're safe telling the other person they want a divorce. Then we'll set them up with a session like that. Sometimes they do just want us to reach out first, and we will. And I will explain to the other person what the process is, because I do see oftentimes that they're confused, they're kind of scared, they think that we're attorneys or they think that we're their spouse's attorney. And so depending on what I can get through to them, I do let them know what the alternatives are if they don't want to mediate first, because usually the person on the other side is saying, well, I've got a certain date in my mind. And if we don't agree to do a joint process by then I'm going to file on my own. And so there's just a lot of negativity that can come out of the traditional litigation. And I think most people want to avoid that generally.
Well, I think that's a great strategy, and it does take some of the questions out of the process from each side. Because as you were talking, my initial thought was, okay, if one party calls you, then do they feel like you're on their side, right? And the whole point of mediation is to sort of be in the middle, right? You're trying to be unbiased. So I know you mentioned if one party doesn't necessarily feel safe or they feel like there's hostility or there's going to be a big reaction from their partner. So does that play into you suggesting some type of risk assessment ahead of time?
I'm sorry, I have work going in the other
That's
room.
okay. It's okay. That's fine. Um,
Does
yeah,
it suggest, say that last part, does it
yeah,
suggest
do
about
you
the
do you think
assessment?
that yes, that then you would suggest some type of that risk assessment that you were mentioning with the nonprofit? Would you say
I
like
do I
sure.
do the pre-screening with every person before mediation. It is just something that I did not used to do. Obviously, there was a point at which I did not do this. And then we had a person who attempted a mass homicide after mediation. And that's something that's really serious. And then that was when I had to have the rule of you have to have your camera on the entire time if you're doing a Zoom session. And then in our county, we had someone commit suicide during a virtual hearing. And so it just like things keep happening that are telling us we need to be doing better. And so that assessment is mandatory for our company.
Wow. I mean, I have chills like hearing about that. That's just a crazy thing. You wouldn't even imagine that something like that could happen. Um, with those things being very possible and obviously having happened, are there any situations where you do an assessment and then you recommend a different course of action?
hmm Yeah, the assessment is really cool. So the web app just completed in August
Right.
1st.
Oh, how
And I've
exciting.
been going in there and playing around with it, and it
Yeah.
scores the assessment and then lets the practitioner know low risk, moderate risk, high risk. And then I think I don't remember the terminology exactly, but it's process Now, it's some kind of override, like a safety override, where
Hmm.
if they answer that there is a current plan in place for suicide, or they have access to weapons and serious intent to harm, or like specific intent to harm another individual, then it will let the person know this is not safe for mediation now and what to refer them to. So either it's a suicide hotline or litigation or some other kind of mental health something. And it
Right.
just goes depending on the category that they're in and gives the practitioner different possible process modifications. Obviously, it's not mandatory because each person is their own mediator or their
Hmm.
own courts. At some point, I want this to get into the courts,
Right.
but it's going to at least give them options and let them know what to look for.
So I guess my question is because I know you're like starting this nonprofit for this, like the risk assessment, right? So it's interesting to me that nobody's ever wanted or thought about doing it before. When you're like, hey, I've
Right.
had this happen. Maybe I need to do this. And then you're going to be like, the nonprofit's going to be for all these other people that are like, hey, you need
Yes.
this risk assessment in place if you're going to do stuff like this.
Yes. It is a little mind blowing that we haven't done this yet. Some people have, some places have. It's definitely not my first idea ever. Most of the other screening tools that I've heard about, though, are just domestic violence and coercive control. This is so far the only one I've seen that puts in the potential risk to harm of self or others. So that's a little bit different. We have our founding board currently, which is our 3 members, and then we're in the process now of establishing the rest of the board for our next September meeting. And we have had people interviewing from all over the world. It is so amazing, like Australia and Sri Lanka and India and England and Canada. So people all over are really interested in this.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Good for
I
Yeah,
love.
you. That's so exciting too, which
Yay.
it's very
means your
exciting.
idea when you brought it up, it was like, yes, this is a need and clearly people are noticing
Right.
it.
Right. I mean, I wasn't expecting that going into it. I definitely always saw it as something that could be international, but I was not expecting our first set of board members to be international already.
That's
I
crazy.
love
So
that.
I feel like it kind of just jumped us forward a little bit of, boots on the ground everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that there is such not only a need for that, but in this particular chapter of people's lives where they're struggling with marriages ending and needing to organize, property and kids and assets and all that kind of stuff, it changes people. And someone who you may not have known to have risk factors or to be dangerous in some way, that's important to know as the dynamic shifts. So, I love this idea and I think it's so necessary in helping people recognize like this is going to be really hard and you may not recognize the person, right? So, I think my question thinking about all of that is, obviously you were talking about there is this self harm and harm to others piece, but then there's also the coercive control and like domestic violence aspect of it. Where do you see more risk in these scenarios? Do you see more of that kind of tactic, domestic violence, or do you see a lot more of that risk to self and others?
I see more of the domestic
Yeah.
piece. Yeah. And I also think about, of course, who's lying, who's afraid to answer some of the questions honestly.
Yeah.
So one of the people that is interviewed is working in psychometric testing. And I think that's something that's going to be really important. And there's another person who just joined the board who does trauma informed work as a mental health counselor. So I think things like that are going to be really important for further developing the assessment because when I presented this to the Florida Mediators Conference, I by no means was like, this is the thing to do. This is the perfect tool. I said, this is just starting. I want everyone to get in on this and make this better because I just feel like things work together. Things work better when we work together. And so it's something that is going to be continually developed over time. It is a copyrighted tool, so it's probably going to have additions to it.
Yeah. So I am interested on your take about this because I don't know enough about like mediation in the sense of the education you have to do it and stuff. But what I've always loved about you since I met you is you do have a psych background and you do have behavioral health background. So how important do you think that is? Because even like, me and Gabby being in the field of like being therapists and seeing couples and seeing families, there's a lot, you're trained to look for and behaviors and verbiage and all of that. And so it does, I guess, blow my mind sometimes when there's like mediators and legal, like in the legal aspect where there isn't that education of like psychology and behavior. So can you speak to that of like how you are kind of different in that aspect of what you're looking for that other maybe either mediators or even lawyers aren't?
Sure. I apologize again for this sound. I know it's coming into here because I see my screen light up from it. Yes, this is something that I speak about a lot, not necessarily on myself. Like I don't want to have the I'm better than other people at this because of my background, but I do like to get out there and talk to everybody who is in this sort of field. So last week I presented to the Central Florida Marriage and Family Therapists Association. Next month I present at the Florida Association for Behavior Analysts. And I am letting those other professionals know these are the types of things that exist. Because not every, at this point, it's just an education thing. A lot of people don't know. We know for the past 100 years, if you want to get divorced, you hire an attorney and you fight. Right? That's what we've been told. So people don't know about parenting coordination, social investigations, guardian ad litem, supervised visitation, mediation, collaborative divorce, all of those things. It's just something that I go and I educate other professionals on, especially those who are in the spaces of working with people and have the components of mental health and psychology and behavior analysis. Because those tools definitely, you use them a lot. There are some cases that I get, especially guardian ad litem ones, that are very, I have to tap into that a lot. And guardian ad litems typically are attorneys. And I sometimes can't imagine an attorney being on specific cases. So that's one of those things, again, where people have to research who is your guardian ad litem before that person is appointed. Because once they're appointed, they're on your case for years. So it's important.
Yeah, I think with how much we see like mental and emotional abuse in relationships, it's like scary to think of having somebody just be like, I have empathy. Like lawyers are trained a certain way, right? But it is very hard for me doing what I do for a living and having empathy, but also knowing the tactics. So knowing what we're looking for versus just like, hey, we're going to the court of law and this is the evidence and this is what we're going to do. When there's like so many deeper things going on in the dynamic. So I guess for me, that's why I always ask because it gets scary. It gets scary. You hear clients all the time like, I'm scared to go because like, hey, I'm with a sociopath and I have kids involved and like I don't know if my lawyer is going to be able to see what's really happening.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I feel like oftentimes once you're already so deep in the court system, that in order to find someone who can see those things, you have to get even deeper. And you have to get more court appointed services, and it gets more invasive and more expensive. So I feel like there are often times where people come in early and they think they're going to need something really deep like that. And then I'm kind of presenting other options of like, just so you know, this is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to cost. There's going to be a person who is looking into you deeply for potentially for years. So, yeah, I feel like sometimes there's that point of no return where you can still kind of not have to do all these things and maybe you can still mediate and you can get through it, even a high conflict mediation. But then sometimes they're already so deep into it where it's just really unfortunate to see. Those cases for my own mental health, I only take on 2 at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a question that I had because, just considering the different dynamics between people, surely there are cases that are not appropriate for a mediation situation. And, I have faith that you could probably handle whatever, but just by you even limiting the amount that you have that are more complex and difficult dynamics, I think it's probably even a situation where you would make a call at times, right? Um, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to hear about that because I love that self-care. We talk about this as professionals all the time. You have to know what your limit is. So I love that. But yeah, I'd love to hear you speak about that if you can.
Yeah, I'm trying to think on if there have been cases where I've said it's not appropriate to continue mediation.
Hmm.
There have been a few where we've done like a safety based parenting plan because there were substance use factors involved and I'm blanking on what the thing is called. Oh, sober link. Like we were
Yeah.
getting sober link in place and different
Hmm.
things like that. So you can have really intensive parenting plans that are developed in mediation as long as both people are able to talk about it and be
Yeah.
open about it. If you get to a point where I feel like there's an active mental health diagnosis that's unchecked that comes out during mediation. That can be something where you have to pause. I did have someone at one point say that they started dissociating during the session. And so that person I made us take a break and I suggested some of the things of like go outside, see the light, maybe touch the grass, feel the air. And the person ended up coming back from the break and continuing and saying they wanted to continue. But things like that can definitely happen. I think the more concerning thing that I've seen is when there are so many finances to split and they want to go really deep into it where maybe they should have some kind of financial investigation or like
Hmm.
a forensic accountant in place, but they also don't want to. So they just keep talking to me about it. And I'm like, well, luckily I'm intelligent. I can do a lot of math. I can do a lot of things. But at this point, it's really like you should have somebody else.
Right.
But, I'm not the court. I can't force them to get somebody else. So I just keep riding the wave.
Right.
I think that's probably when I felt most uncomfortable during a mediation was large amounts of money, lots of
Hmm.
accounts, and them not wanting financial advisors to come in.
Right. Yeah, I can see. I mean, I have clients that have been in mediation for, 2 days and they've had huge, long sessions and they're not getting anywhere. So, how would you work your magic with that when you have one participant that's really obstinate and stubborn and wants to argue everything and go back and forth? Because that seems unproductive and exhausting. So,
Hmm.
we definitely both, I think Alessia has had, I work a lot in divorce and, the end of marriages and stuff. So I've had a lot of clients come and say, like, that was a waste, that was
Right.
12 hours of my life and we did
Yep.
nothing. So
Yep.
how would you address that?
The first thing is that I don't allow all day sessions. We have a 2-hour rotator that we do. Most of them finish in 2 hours. They have the opportunity to go to 3 and possibly up to 4, but not
Mhm.
over 4 in a day because at that point, I feel like just being there is aversive. And then people are more
Yeah.
likely to agree to something that they may not agree to just to be able to escape. So I think that in and of itself is a big help. When we have attorneys come to mediation with their clients, they're already used to either the 4 or the 8-hour days.
Hmm.
And I'm like, nope, we're not going to do that here. Sorry, it just doesn't
Hmm.
seem as effective. I mean, oh my gosh. So I was the guardian ad litem in a mediation once, and it was a 10 or 11-hour mediation. And I was, I
Exhausted.
was not
Yeah.
doing well at that
Yeah.
point. I'm like, how can anybody do this for this
Right.
long?
Yeah. Right.
So I think that's a good thing that helps people just coming in knowing that. It's kind of like a sigh of relief, especially if they've done mediation before, because what they're used to is going to be we're in separate rooms, the mediator goes back and forth, and we just sit there for 4 hours or longer.
Right.
And we generally like to do joint mediation as long as it's safe to do so, and if both
Hmm.
people want to, because they have the right to caucus to be in a separate room. And so that's not anything that someone can say no to. But I recommend joint because it's faster and it can be more effective. So unless I am regularly seeing somebody cutting the other person off, or if I'm seeing some sort of dynamic that makes me uncomfortable, then I will break them up, but I always try to go for the joint first. So I think those two things help with people who can get stuck.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I also think it's hard because, I mean, me and Gabby could probably talk about this for days because of our own experiences with things, but then you do have people that, if you think about super abusive tactics too, like the goal is to wear you down, right? The
Mm-hmm.
goal is to wear you
Mhm.
down to get
Mhm.
to get the power, right? So it's like when you think about those 12-hour days, it's only working in an abusive person's favor too. So it sounds like just how you said, Elise, you would be exhausted. There's no way I could sit there for 12 hours. Like psychologically, we know our
Yeah.
attention span doesn't
Mm-hmm.
even usually last longer than 50 minutes, So
Mhm.
it's like we're
Right.
forcing people to go into these already traumatic situations, make huge decisions about how your life moving forward with, especially when you have
Mhm.
children involved.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then it's like, let's wear you down. And I always have this anger, I guess, when we're talking about it, like, well, what if the opposite side is like, good, I'm going to sit here all day to wear them down.
Right.
And then it's like you said, then it's like, I'm going to be impulsive and make a decision. So I don't have to spend more money because I'm worried
Right.
to spend more money and I'm tired of all this. So let me just give in. That impacts the rest of somebody's life.
Yeah.
Right. Right. That's a third thing I'm going to add too is our office. There's food, tea, other drinks. One of the walls that the clients sit and look at is all forest wallpaper and then a
Oh,
fountain. So
I
it's
love
meant to be a really calming space. It's
Yeah.
not like, going into some little jail cell.
Yeah, right. Well, I
Yeah.
think the whole process can feel so sterile from like start to finish. So I love that obviously you're using your background to recognize like this is very difficult and you've been there yourself. It's tough. So yeah, I think that this type of approach to litigation and legal stuff can be very healing in a lot of ways if allowed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I love that. I think
Thank
it's great.
you. I
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. So
Yay!
before
This is
before
exciting.
we end, we like to ask you, with all of your knowledge, your background, and even with your nonprofit, like getting it out there, if you
Uh-huh.
were going to give any of our listeners like tools, tips, tricks that you would want them to take if they, are going through a divorce or they are thinking about it, what would you want them to take and know for themselves?
There are so many. Okay, so keep talking. If it's safe to do so, keep talking. It's going to go faster and it's going to be a lot more painless. If it's not safe to do that, then get out. I mean, there are some people that are just stuck and feel like they can't get out, but there are so many services available that are actually good, like Safe House of Seminole and Harbor House in Orange County. If there's domestic violence or like extreme coercive control that you feel like you can't deal with, that those are good places to be. I mean, I was in Safe House of Seminole with my kids when they were really young for a month for a situation like that. And it was something that I was nervous to go into because my mom especially thought that it was going to be safe and dirty, and it just wasn't like that at all. And they give you free therapy for a year, and if you need an injunction, they give you an attorney for that, and they help you get work if you need work or food. So just really great resources if you're not in a safe relationship.
Yeah, I love that. I think a big message here is how much more supported people can feel if they know what's available. Because even just
Mhm.
hearing you talk, like, I
Yeah.
think anyone would feel if they knew what the options were, it would feel less suffocating, right? And you'd feel,
Yes.
okay, I have control. I
Right.
can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And to
I love,
also not feel alone.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Bingo.
And also, like, Elise, like I've told clients, when people have asked, like, it is my mindset now is like, trusting you enough as the professional to know, like, you could just talk to her first and see if that can be the option first and let her give
Mhm.
you options, and then she can send you elsewhere, like, I think that will give people hope, right? As long as like you're like their first touch and you can be like, let me explain the options, what's your
Right.
situation, so you're not feeling like, okay, I have to call a lawyer, because it is intimidating.
Yeah.
You hear people all the time like, I don't
Right.
want to go through this because I have to call a lawyer, and then hear money, financial stress, all this stuff
Yes.
starts
Mhm.
causing panic. So it's like, who can I at least like, let me call Serenity Solutions, ask them what my options are. Do they have options for me, or can they refer me to like, no, maybe you need this. So
Yeah.
I love that you give
Yeah.
those options for people.
Thanks. And I really appreciate when anyone thinks of me as that first person to talk to, because I do love being that. And we partner with some very wonderful resolution focused attorneys, and all of our clients get a free consultation
Love
with
that.
attorneys.
Yay.
I love that.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for your
Thank you
amazing
so
work,
much.
because this is really great.
Yeah.
Thank you. You
Yeah.
guys
And thank
too.
you. And
Yay.
thank you for all your information for our listeners, because I know a lot of them need it. So,
Anytime.
yeah. If you have any listeners, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and you want to talk to Elyse, we will tag her in all of our stuff. Or if you have any questions, let us know and we can ask her for you. So,
Sounds good. Till next time, squad.
until next
Bye.
time.
Thank you.